Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 137 of the Retro Spectives Podcast, Mailbag 7. That's right, everyone, you heard correctly. We're not reviewing a video game this episode. We're doing our yearly tradition of answering questions from our Discord base, from our listener base, about all video games, both ones we've played for the podcast and new ones as well. I'm joined as always by my co-host, James Turlings. James, how was your Christmas? You have a good New Year?
Yeah, pretty good. I've been plowing through my backlog, actually. It's always good to get the few weeks of not having a designated game to play because I can play whatever I want to. It's fun.
Yeah, it is nice to take a break from our podcast duties. I've been playing some Slop, a game called Avowed. It's not a very good game, but it's a game that I enjoy a lot, and I'm very happy that I can reconcile those two things in an honest way. Yeah, very fun game, very basic game, but one that resonates with me. I think I have a thing for exploration in video games. That's one of the things I value the most. So any game that can tap into that exploration itch, even if objectively it's not the best video game, is one that I enjoy a lot.
You always mentioned you enjoy history and stuff. Is that the kind of motivating thing for that kind of stuff, or is it more the visuals and the sights that you think motivate you?
It's an interesting point. I think that perhaps one of the reasons that immersive sim style storytelling resonates with me a lot is because of my love of history, because discovering documents and reading them and reading lots of different perspectives is how you come to an understanding of history. And the way that immersive sims structure their storytelling with all of those audio logs and diaries and everything is kind of like a compressed version of that. I think the reason I like it from a gameplay perspective is that it's kind of a way to engage with loot goblining that's a little more involved than just killing things. For me, finding hidden treasure is a more enjoyable thing to me than, I guess, killing a high-level mob and running an RNG simulator, like what Diablo 2 does. Finding more specific, unique, hidden loot because I've thoroughly inspected an environment or I've solved a little puzzle kind of lights the endorphins in my brain. So I think the history angle is true when it comes to exploring these game stories. A game like Hypnospace Outlaw, for example, is a game where you literally explore both the main narrative and the side stories entirely at your own pace and in your own way. But for a game like Avowed, it's far more about the finding cool loot aspect of it as opposed to the historical connection.
Yeah, I played a game this holidays called Lunacid, which I felt like gave me a similar kind of experience. It was a Kingsfield clone. Honestly, ripoff's probably closer. The guy obviously loves his From Software because he quite literally just ripped one-to-one the level from Demon Souls, the tower with the prison, just copy pasted into the game.
That's amazing.
I was honestly impressed at how that guy had the audacity to do that.
That's the one with the big like tree or slime monster or whatever growing over it, right?
Yeah. It was only the first third, 3-1. So the bit with the spooky
right
with the lanterns,
yeah,
and you've got the multiple levels of jail cells. But that game, yeah, pretty much all of the stuff you found came from finding hidden walls. So I was running around every single room, mashing E on the walls, which I've always kind of liked. Very pretty game. Combat could use a lot of work. Probably it was kind of trivialized by doing ranged combat, but everything else is pretty fun. So yeah, got through that, played through the start. I've played Sectori a bunch as well, the twin stick shooter game. That's
the Geometry
cool.
Wars,
It's great game. Would highly recommend that. Played through Urban Myth Dissolution Center as well, which had a cool narrative and visuals. Not sure how I feel about the plot twist at the end, still processing that, but they definitely swung for the hills with it, so we'll give them the credit for that.
Very cool. Yeah, I have not been as... I've worked most of the holidays, actually, so I haven't been able to really smash gaming as much as I'd like, but that'll come soon. My holiday is just in the off-season. So James, Mailbag 7. So we have a lot of questions from our listeners. Massive thank you for everyone for submitting their questions. We really appreciate them. We've got a lot to go through. A lot of you have given us multiple questions, and we want to try and give a crack at answering all of them. Some might be shorter answers, but we'll at least go through them all. And we're just going to kind of roll through these in the order in which they were asked rather than do an elaborate read structure. And what we might do, James, is we'll just take it in turns, reading out the questions to try and pace our vocal cords, because this is probably going to be a pretty long episode.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll start. So the first question we have here is from longtime listener Mayday. And his first question of about 4 or 5 is, of the games you covered, which would you pick as the quintessential when it comes to demonstrating the concept of the podcast? As in pre-2000 games you've been legitimately impressed by and think are just as good as modern titles? Or alternatively, acclaimed classics that you think have only gotten by on their legendary reputation? I think this one's pretty easy from my point of view. I would say that the good one here is obviously Resident Evil. This always comes back to that game, and the overrated game very easily GoldenEye for me. It's that game has not aged well, unfortunately. I really think that multiplayer and fond memories got that game way further than it ever had the right to. It is not very fun to play if you don't have nostalgia for it.
Yeah, and I agree on both of those, but I've gone for 2 slightly different games. So my game, which I think is a fantastic modern title, is Archimedean Dynasty, and I think it's one of our better episodes. I think that game has awesome lore, awesome world building, really interesting gameplay, and very kind of like a unique gameplay experience that I don't think that you can get today, and one that I think developers will probably stay away from. The extremely limited field of view in particular. The only game that I can think of that it's close is Iron Lung, which is more of a puzzle game than an action game as well. The game which I think is overrated is Eternal Darkness. Eternal Darkness is super interesting because I think that it tapped into Cthulhu-esque lore, and I think that it had all of these really cool gimmicks where when your sanity is low, like stuff like you sinking into the floor is a glitch, that's all like a trick. But these are just ultimately surface level things. Eternal Darkness was a game where it had this dressing as a eldritch horror kind of game, but it really didn't have much going on under the hood. And while that glitchiness was cool, I mean, that's not a video game. That's just a cool thing that it includes, and that can't make up for the lack of substance in its mechanics. It's one of the worst survival horror games I've ever played, just not very interesting to play. So I like those 2 examples because I think Archimedean Dynasty was a really robust game that a lot of people probably don't know about. And Eternal Darkness is remembered fondly more because of its gimmicks than what it actually is as a video game experience.
Yeah, and I think the gimmicky thing, it's like the value in those gimmicks is kind of lost to the time period, right? Because that kind of thing's not very impressive anymore, I don't think. If they tried to make a game like that today, they'd have to go to much greater lengths to impress people, I think.
Well, you've got Doki Doki Literature Club, or you've got Inscription. Yeah. Like, there are games that dabble with this stuff, but even then, I feel like those games have more substance to them. Like, Inscription has a legitimately fun card game and aesthetic underwriting, at least in Act 1. And Doki Doki Literature Club, I think it has a solid, if simple, romance visual novel, which holds it all together. That was my problem with Eternal Darkness. I think that what was actually under the hood was less interesting.
It's not like a game like I hate or anything. Like
Yeah, it's not offensive.
There's some like mediocre games that you just like think of and you're like, ugh. That one, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cute for what it was doing.
Yeah, and its like the whole like rune system where you kind of built a spell was kind of interesting. It's not that there was nothing there. It's just I found it, kind of boring, a bit of a slog. And was surprised at the rating it was getting. Like, to me, it would be a 4 or 5 out of 10, you know? It wouldn't be
Talking
an 8
about the rune system makes me want to add Arx Fatalis to the overrated category.
Wow. Those are fighting words.
Yeah, I don't know. It did nothing for me. I was kind of bored the whole time.
That's so interesting. For me, it was kind of the opposite. I think Arx Fatalis is actually a really interesting game because of being like a physicky dungeon crawler kind of game. Its combat was arse though.
I do think the quest in the Goblin Camp was quite cool. Outside of that though, I didn't really vibe with it at all.
More on Arx Fatalis later. I've got as an answer to another question. But let me just say that I think that the combat in that game is arse, but there's still a lot more to that game than just its combat. Okay, next question. So this is also from Mayday, so we'll let you know when we have a new user asking questions. You have talked before about games like Doom that you think you covered way too early because of the usual early podcast episode growing pains, and damn, he's right. Are there any games that you think you should have covered earlier, either because you love the game that much or you think that the experience of playing that game would have helped you review other games? James, hit us up.
Yeah, so I don't really have an answer for one that would help me review other games better. So my answers are more in terms of discovering something that I like. I wish I'd done it earlier, so I've got two answers for this. The first one was Blood, actually, because Blood is the first old school shooter that I really enjoyed. Doom, like everyone likes Doom, but I think everyone likes Doom more than I like Doom. It's just okay to me, like I'm happy to play it. Quake I hated, whereas Blood I loved to bits. I thought the enemy design, the level design,
weapon design,
theming, the weapon variety, everything, they just did it so well. The speed at which you move, secrets, all of it. It pretty much just had everything that I wanted. And I think I really enjoyed how wild some of the level design got. Like, there was experimental ones for sure, but also a lot of just really solid shooter levels. And I really thought it was interesting how they understood, the value of the hit scan enemies versus the projectile enemies and how different it made you play certain sections. So I thought that was an awesome game. The second answer for this is Mushihime-sama. I have come to realize I love shoot 'em ups. They're probably the most fun genre to me now. They're just pure gameplay, and you can just keep getting better and better as you play them. They always have, if they don't have good music, why bother? So, it's just always something I love doing. So I've been doing that a lot in my free time over the last few years.
I just had a specific question about this, because obviously you've played a lot of them. As you play, presumably you've played harder and harder games. To what degree is it memorization versus action, skill, ability, or is it like a combination of the two?
It's a combination of the two. I don't play on difficulties where literally I memorize the entire route. I do have to practice some bosses and have like a general game plan for certain patterns, but it's like a loose game plan rather than I'm going to move to this corner and this corner in this exact. I think playing in that way would take all the fun out of it for me. So it's mostly just about pattern recognition, knowing when to bomb. There's this period at the beginning where you see bombing as a failure and you just refuse to do it ever. I think other games in the genre have kind of made bombing like more of a necessary thing than a get out of jail free card. Knowing when to bomb for more score to get more continues, or to when you're in a bad spot, and just having the presence of mind to press the button was a thing that took a while. Knowing how to lead patterns, because I think when you first start playing, the obvious thing to do is to have your ship at the bottom of the screen, because it's the furthest away from the top.
More reaction time, right?
Yeah, but what that ends up doing is if you get a wave of bullets come straight down the middle at you and you move to the right, there's now a bunch of slow moving bullets directly in the middle, so you've effectively cut half the screen off and you can no longer go to the left. And then if you do the same thing over and over, you just get a smaller and smaller play area. So what you actually need to do is kind of pendulum back and forth in order to keep your available space open. Stuff like that. Yeah, it gets...
See, my problem with this genre is mostly that the entry level, the way to get new players in is very hard. Like, for me playing Wish Him a Summer was frustrating because it felt like transitioning to the higher difficulties was a very frustrating process, and I wish there was a smoother way to go from, I guess, a simpler version of the game where it taught you stuff like penduluming, which sounds like a really cool concept that I literally have never learned, but makes perfect sense now you say it, without being as brutally difficult as it is.
I stopped playing stuff like Mushi specifically because the way that the levels and the respawning work is kind of insane in the arcade style games. I think games that have like actual independent levels are so much better. The genre is kind of like stuck in that arcade mindset, which I think is really holding it back. I think there is room in the world for a more level-based approach that with more granular, because like the ones that I like the most will have like multiple independent levels, so you can just keep, this level's too hard, I'll go to this one, and this one's too easy, I'll bump the, and you just progressively beat them on different difficulty levels. I found that helped me a lot.
Yeah, Mini Shoot Adventures is like the only one I've played anytime recently, but that has a very, very smooth difficulty curve that eases you in. And I feel like maybe that's what the genre needs to do to grow its audience, potentially. Good answers, though, James. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I kind of took the question a little differently. I was more talking about games that would help me review, and it's kind of like generic answers, but Ocarina of Time and Final Fantasy VII. I think there's something to be said for playing landmark influential games that kind of wrote the book or set the tone for a lot of what comes after, because it kind of gives you a better understanding of video game design as a whole. This really stood out to me, not even with these two games in particular, when I played Ico, because I think I would have had a better appreciation for Ico if I'd played Ocarina of Time first, and I would have had a better appreciation for the Prince of Persia games if I'd played Ico first. It's never necessary to play the earlier games or early iterations or inspirations for modern games, but it does give you an additional layer of perspective, which I think is always going to be useful when you're critiquing these video games. So I guess those two stand out as games that I wish I'd played earlier because of how influential they are in the gaming landscape.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I do remember on the Ico episode, some of the things that we discussed were interesting to me because we hadn't done I chose to play Ocarina because we did Ico and we were talking about Zelda. So I think that's good. So the next one, you've covered a couple of licensed games on the podcast. Are there any licenses that maybe got a lot of games previously, whether you've played them or not, that you think deserve to get a more modern game interpretation? I actually struggle to answer this one. I think it's because I actually don't engage with media outside video games very much, to be honest. Like, I don't watch a lot of shows or read a lot these days. I'm just too lazy to do stuff that's not interactive. I get bored if I don't get engaged with something actively.
For me, this was also a tough question, but less because of that and more that I think that most movies and books are poor fits for video games. But I did have a very good answer for this in the next question, James, because Mayday also has a follow-up question of a license that lacks a game entirely.
I hope it's the same answer I gave.
So my answer is Brandon Sanderson's either Mistborn or Stormlight Archive.
Okay.
So the reason for this is that Brandon Sanderson, he's a fantasy writer, one of the big ones, and he specifically in his books writes with a hard magic system. So his magic systems are very well detailed and they have rules. I think that this is already halfway set up for a video game already. And I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been a Brandon Sanderson video game yet, because to me it seems like a perfect fit. Brandon Sanderson is also like big into video games and gaming in general, which I think influenced him in his design of his Magic system. So to me, anything by Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn or his Stormlight Archive books, I think would translate well for video game. So, but you had a different answer, did you, James?
Yeah. So for the licensed game that lacks a game that should get a game, yeah, I had an answer for this. I think Malazan should get a JRPG because it upset
Patrick. I mean, the problem with Malazan is Malazan does not have a hard magic system. Yeah. The magic in Malazan is a lot of vague nonsense that I think works from an emotionally resonant point of view, but I think would probably translate pretty poorly to a video game. The real thing is, yeah, if it was a JRPG and it was 200 hours long, I would have to play it, James, wouldn't I?
Absolutely, would have to play it.
That is a good answer, though.
All those random encounters. No, it's like, what would they be?
Random encounters in the Malazan world. It makes me sick. I did think of Malazan, but I was like, nah, that's a shitty fit for a video game.
I actually agree. Like, I actually do, like, jokes aside, I do agree. I think it would be better like with a TV show or anime kind of adaptation than like something more visual where you can be, stuff can happen on screen and you don't necessarily have to explain what's happening.
I don't know if I've told you this, but you know that like the early books of Malazan were like role played by
they were
Erickson and his
originally.
mate.
It does make sense to me.
Yeah, like all of the shit that happened was determined by dice rolls, and then they wrote a book about. They didn't use D&D; they used a system called GURPS.
Yeah,
but they literally were each of them was role playing like half the cast, and they did a bunch of dice rolls, and that was the outcome of the first book.
It does make sense to me with how like erratic some characters' decisions can feel sometimes. Or like how like a plot thread will start and not really go anywhere just because that's how the dice lay. It makes a lot of sense. Also, like the whole point of the book is one of the main characters getting influenced by the god of random chance, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah, messing with a lot of things, dice rolls.
Yeah, so it fits.
So finally, just to add to my answer, I think if there was a Sanderson game, the game style which I actually kept thinking of was Dark Messiah of Might and Magic.
Oh, that would be good, yeah.
Because that's a game that is very much a physics playground. And when I think of like the fights in Brandon Sanderson's book, they're very kinetic. Yeah. You kind of have these characters like launching themselves all over the place, lashing themselves to surfaces, messing with gravity, and I'm like, yeah, a Dark Messiah style game where you have these different spells and abilities to mess with enemies sounds really cool. Like you select an enemy to select them flying up in the air or whatever, and I feel like it feels like that's unexplored ground. Like we haven't really got like a full physics playbox kind of action game that I can think of in recent years. Maybe because it's too difficult, but yeah, that's what I thought of.
So that was the first lot of Mayday's questions. I think he has a couple more later on as well, so thank you.
I've actually got them here, so we may as well hit them now while I'm still here. I've kind of grouped the questions together by person. So he then asks a question which I don't really have an answer for, unfortunately, but he asks, how frustrating is it knowing that PAL video formats gimped a lot of games coming out in Australia for years?
Okay.
This didn't affect me at all in any way whatsoever that I was aware of growing up. Did this affect you at all, James?
Yeah, so this didn't affect me at all while I was growing up. However, as an adult, it actually makes importing old games really annoying because you have to double check that they're like the right version for the console that you have, and that shit's super annoying. Like, so I hate it. Yeah.
Wait, what games have you imported recently? Like
trying to find old copies of like PlayStation 2 titles or like old DS titles, stuff like that.
Wait, DS is impacted by this as well?
I believe so. I don't think 3DS
Interesting.
was, but it was quite a few of them had version differences. It's very annoying. I didn't really notice too much about the way games ran or stuff like that when I was growing up, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, this one is just like not. I think that as an adult, this would bother me a lot more, but because I was a kid when this is an issue, it kind of just flew over my head.
Yeah, and now everything's digital distribution, so it's like whatever.
Another question. He asked, "Do you have any favorite recent albums?" James, you listened to any music this year?
Nothing that wasn't a video game soundtrack. No,
That counts. That counts 100%.
I
Any good
really
video
like
game
the
OSTs?
OST to Blue Revolver, which is a shoot 'em up. I think that soundtrack slaps. Other than that, though, I haven't really been paying attention to a lot of like music releases.
I'm not super into music, but an album that I really enjoyed is "Let God Sort 'Em Out" by Clips. I have a thing for, I guess you'd say, kind of like aggressive hip hop. Like I like hip hop with a bit of meanness to it. And I think that this album is just fantastic. I'm not going to try and explain why because I'm a video game critic, not a music critic. I'll make a fool of myself, but just shout out to "Let God Sort 'Em Out" by Clips. Then, because I got it here, I'll go again, James. This is an interesting question, I think, because of the assumption behind it. So Mayday asks, if you were to apply the Retro Spectives format to other mediums like albums, movies, TV shows, what examples of these mediums would you pick that you would think make for an interesting episode? So my answer to this is kind of like, I already do this. Like when I watch an old movie, I'm not trying to understand it in the context in which it was produced. I'm just watching an old movie and enjoying it or not enjoying it. Same with an old TV show. Same with listening to music or anything. I mean, when we as consumers in our society watch old content, we're doing it because we want to. We want to because they're enjoyable for us to consume. And my favorite movie of all time is Chinatown, a neo-noir film released in 1974, more than 15 years from before the day I was born. There's nothing special about the way that we really evaluate things on this podcast, really. All we do is we play a video game and we tell you what we think about it. We're just not giving it special importance or trying not to offend people who it's their favorite thing. We're just telling you how we feel about it. And I think that for some reason it's less acceptable in broader terms to do this for video games, maybe because video games are a newer genre, than it is for other things. If you watch a movie from 1960 and you tell your friend that it sucks and you didn't enjoy it, no one's going to raise an eyebrow. But you say you don't enjoy a JRPG from 10 years ago, and suddenly you've got pitchforks coming at your throat.
You just say you don't like a good game and you get pitchforks going through. No. I don't have a great answer for this because I don't like watching movies. So, like, I'll watch like one a year maybe. And like, if the option to watch one comes up, I'll dodge it relentlessly. I do not want to sit in the same spot for 3 hours doing nothing. It's really boring to me. It doesn't matter how like engaging the movie is, I will get bored within 20 minutes. So I do not engage with it anymore.
Hey, can I ask you, sorry, this is kind of a random segue. Have you seen Redline, that anime movie about the race?
Yeah, that one was good.
You liked that one, right?
Yeah, because it was like an 8-year animation project. That one was really good.
It was spectacle galore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That thing, I guess I can watch because like I have an investment in an interest in animation, so it's just kind of an impressive piece of art. I was also like, that was quite a while ago. I think back then I was also a lot more open to watching stuff. It was like during the uni years when half my time was spent drinking in the living room with friends.
Yeah, it is also easier just to watch these things when you've got the regular social group to watch it with. I watched Redline with some friends. I probably wouldn't have watched it by myself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it it was a visual spectacle. It was very funny though how
The
like
ending's
some
so
things.
good.
It's so yeah, the ending's fantastic. But I thought it was funny though, like they unleash this biological weapon of mass destruction and then it's just forgotten about and they just move on. And
Yep.
that keeps happening in that movie. This crazy shit happens and they just move on.
They just move on. This planet's
You
fucked.
just-
To find another one.
Yeah, it's very much like live in the moment and enjoy the visual spectacle kind of movie. But yeah, good movie. Yeah, that's the end of Mayday's questions. Thank you so much, Mayday. Who's our next listener, James?
Yeah, so next we have Sarge, and his first question is the focus of the podcast is playing games in the context of the modern day. With several games that you've covered, you've used community fixes or update patches such as Arc Libertatis, GZ Doom / Crispy Doom, TF Fix, etc. Do you feel like these unofficial projects provide a different experience to what the games normally offer? Are you okay with them as an enhancement, something that you consider a natural part of the experience of modern systems, or something that should be evaluated completely separately? How do you balance the authenticity of the experience versus the accessibility and playability? So for me, I think that with these older titles that you pretty much can't play unmodded on modern systems. You pretty much have to do it. So this is going to be the experience that most people are going to get today anyway, I think. I generally prefer not to use massive gameplay overhauls when doing these. I guess the exception would be like when we did Metroid Prime, we used the one that gave us mouse control instead of controller. But, you know, I think a large part of the experience was preserved there. My preference is to try and have the experience that most people listening are going to be the most familiar with.
Yeah, I think basically there is a bit of a gray area here, right? We want to play something that is pretty close to the original version, but I don't really want to be fanatical about it.
I also don't want to play the game through more than once because, like, I feel that your opinion will change if you play it multiple times. And that, like, first encounter opinion is kind of the one I'm trying to get for the review because it's like, if I played the game through once and it's profoundly negative, but then I play it a second time and I like it a bit more, like, and then I say the game's good, well, someone's going to play the game, get 10 minutes in, hate it, and then drop it and never play it again. So, like, whether or not that's going to be the experience, I think I want to preserve. Also, limited time, right?
Yeah. So we're kind of trying to be practical about this where what we try and do is if there's an old game and there's something that fixes it up in a minor way while seemingly preserving the original experience, we're generally going to grab it because it's fixing up bugs and it's making if it gives us a widescreen resolution or whatever. All that stuff doesn't, I think, majorly affect the experience. And I think that if most people were to play, say, Thief today, they're probably going to download T-Fix Lite. Like, they're not going to just play the original version. Or I would say that that's what they should do. If you were a person in that community and someone said, hey, I want to play Thief today, they'd probably recommend you download T-Fix Lite. I think that if your goal is to try and understand the game from a historical perspective, it makes a lot more sense to try and get something perfectly identically correct. But because in our podcast we're trying to do something a little different, we're just trying to talk about our modern experiences, it's okay to have these little mods which change the experience in small ways. I mean, James, if you remember, I even downloaded a mod for Baldur's Gate to auto reveal the traps instead of having to wait for 5 seconds every few footsteps. And to me, that was a mod that didn't dramatically affect the experience and was just like a quality of life thing. So I think that, there's obviously a little bit of gray area here. And I understand if someone would say, no, you've dramatically changed the experience by doing this, particularly with like the mouse and keyboard controls. I think that's a solid argument to make. But I think that generally we are on the right side of this when we download these little mods.
So the next one from Sarge as well. Are there any games that you really want to cover but can't for whatever reason? Be that, maybe they're too nostalgic or the length or they're not playable anymore? And the answer I have for this one is, yeah, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey is a game I've always wanted to play for the show, but it is way too long. It's like 60 hours. And we've always tended to avoid these like super long RPGs because like we want to keep up the pace of episodes, and also like if one of us doesn't like it and has to play it for 60 hours, it's just going to be fucking miserable, right?
For me, it's Deus Ex. I've played this game 3 or 4 times unmodded. I've played it 3 times modded. I've played it so much that I've memorized a lot of the levels. I know where every single secret is, not from looking up a guide, just from I just know where everything is. It's extremely hard for me to review it in any kind of objective sense. Like I can share my experiences playing it, but I just don't think it's a good fit for an episode of this show. So yeah, Deus Ex for me is the.
And then so then we've got if you were suddenly made Supreme Emperor of Earth and could demand any game be either remade or get a sequel, and it would be made however you want, what would you change and why? And I had a great answer for this, I felt, is that I would remake Metal Gear Solid 5 to have a real story, to have David Hayter as the voice actor, and pretty much like keep the gameplay the way it is, but just like have it be more of a, the other Metal Gear games, and rather than this like very story-light sandboxy thing that just didn't scratch the same itch that I wanted it to.
Yeah, that is a great answer, actually. Yeah. For me, I went with, how I said it would be coming back? I went with Arx Fatalis.
Okay.
I think that there's actually the base here for like a 10 out of 10 brilliant game, because I think that the magic system in it is really cool. I think the dungeon crawling is cool. I like the way that you would cast spells to like let you float over things, or you'd put things on pressure plates. It's just that the combat in this game is so bad that most of the spells are just completely unusable and you don't have any reason to use them. And I think that some of these, it's probably stuff like having to get all of those stupid things for that dungeon. I think it was all the runes or all the plates for that one dungeon was just incredibly painful. A sequel to this game as opposed to a remake, because I think they'd need to make some pretty fundamental changes. But the base here is rock solid. They could do something amazing with this game.
I would be down for that. I just fundamentally think that style of combat's one of the hardest to make engaging. Like, I don't think I've ever seen it done well. Like, first person, melee magic mix. It just always feels like the worst part of the game that it's in. Like, it always feels like the game that has it is really good. Like, you've got your Elder Scrolls games and whatever. But it's always like, it's fun exploring the world in first person more than it is fighting stuff. Fighting stuff is always like, the bit that drags everything else down to me in those.
You somehow need to make utility spells just as good or better than damage spells. And that is a tough thing to ask, right?
Combat utility, you mean not? Because, out of combat utility spells is easy, like lighting fires and levitating and stuff like that. Puzzle solving, I think, you need to make dispelling stuff, and it needs to be interactive in a way that's quite difficult.
Yeah, how do you solve the optimization puzzle? Because the problem is the player's going to beeline towards what's optimal. Like, the only game I can think that kind of did it in an interesting way was Magicka, and I think that stemmed from that game being hard to actually do what you wanted to do half the time. And the moment that you would, I imagined, because I never played Magicka enough to get to this stage, but I'm assuming there is an optimal group of spells that you cast in Magicka and the rest are not as optimal. And so that only solves it as long as the player is incompetent.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would like to see that kind of game done well, though. I think it'd be really fun. It just, that one didn't do it for me.
Next Sarge asks, have you ever met any of the fans of the show in real life unplanned? Unfortunately not, Sarge.
Not, no.
Unfortunately not. We need a larger audience.
Yeah, Australia's not the right country for that, I think. We're too spread out.
We are. I mean, we have more listeners in the UK. I think Australia is the fourth most popular country. More in like US, UK, and Germany or something. It's quite funny.
I've only met people that I already knew before we started the show.
Yeah, that counts. Then he says, if you could convince Albo, and Albo is our PM, the guy in charge, to play any one game for the sake of Australia, what would it be and why? Did you have an answer for this one, James?
Okay, this is a terrible question to not, like, I didn't write the context.
It is a terrible question. I agree. What are you doing, Sarge?
I just wrote the name of the game. I didn't write why I picked this game. I wrote Metal Gear Solid 2. Which I think, I guess maybe, I want him to go through.
You just want to confuse him, right?
Yeah, I want him to think about, the state of the media.
Think about
and
scissors.
Stuff. Scissors, yeah.
That's a good answer.
I want him to play as Naked Raiden doing cartwheels through the Metal Gear.
Why not Metal Gear Rising? That's a better answer.
And he has to stream it too.
God, I feel terrible. I actually had a very serious answer for this. Okay. So I said Disco Elysium.
I knew you were going to say that too.
Why?
I just feel that it has to be a political leaning game, right? Like,
yeah, in some way. But yours was a better shitpost answer. But I think Disco it's both a wide and a deep dive into so many different ideas that I think it's going to be meaningful for everyone in some way to discover something or learn something or think about something from a different perspective. And I think that the heart of that game is very sentimental, that cares about people in a deep way. So I feel like it's really interesting in that it covers so many perspectives, but it's ultimately a really beautiful game, and it has the added bonus of being one of the funniest games I've ever played. And games that are both emotionally deep and resonant and very funny are usually some of my favorite. Like Catch 22 is one of my favorite books of all time, a book that's simultaneously horrific and hilarious. And Disco, I think, hits a lot of the same vibes. So yeah. Your answer was better though, James.
I can see two like asshole kids at the start of Disco.
Yeah, Kuno and Counter.
Yeah, I feel like that those two represent like half of Albo's voter base. Like half of the people in my country are like one step above that.
Okay, and then he asks, what do you think are the most overrated and underrated games covered on the show so far?
Okay, so I've got an answer for overrated and underrated. So for over, I've got GoldenEye, Splinter Cell, Chaos Theory, all the Fallout games. And then in underrated, I've got Gorky 17, Riddick Butcher Bay, F-Zero GX, and... Okay, so the game itself is probably overrated, but I've got the Ocarina of Time Water Temple as underrated here, because I think that we realized it's actually quite good if you're not a child.
Interesting choices. Yeah, I thought about Gorky 17 as well, but I feel like probably like as a cult classic, it's appropriately rated. For me, there was one game that really stood out as overrated, and that was The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. A game which I think is like trash. Like I think it's like a really bad game that's entirely carried by its license, with the last couple of levels of that game being awful, running at like 15 FPS, clusterfucky, terrible, unenjoyable messes. So in some ways, to me, it was worse than GoldenEye, because GoldenEye at least was innovative in the time in which it was created, and it's got some interesting scripting things going on, whereas Lord of the Rings was just an uninspired beat 'em up. So yeah, and people love that game. People give that game 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 10 out of 10s all the time.
See, I've got Chaos Theory and overrated, but Chaos Theory I still think is a good game. It's just like I think GoldenEye and the Fallout games are trash, but I think Chaos Theory's a good game that's a bit overhyped. Like, it's good, but it's a bit one-dimensional once you start using the tools it gives you, because there's
Yeah.
like one super powerful tool and it's like fun to use, but it's not as fun to use as I think it got hyped up to be.
Yeah, even the co-op was not as fun as I was expecting. Those co-op moves were far more limited. I thought they'd be like freeform, but no, they were just, you're in this spot, you can do the co-op move.
Still fun because you do something with friends and it's fun.
Yeah. So for underrated, I actually had a game that I think is not underrated broadly speaking, but I think is underrated in the Hitman community, and that's Hitman 2 Silent Assassin, my favorite Hitman game that everyone seems to hate, is still my favorite, and I liked it a lot more than Blood Money. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, like to me, this is definitely the highlight. And Blood Money wasn't a bad game, but to me, Silent Assassin was the peak.
2 was definitely better than 1. I think 1 was
Yes.
one of the worst games we've covered on the show.
It was so fucking annoying, that game.
Yeah, just like the worst level save system known ever. Anyway,
next question is from Coddy. Talking of Hitman, he says, what's a small mechanic that you really appreciated and wish would get copied in other games? An example of this would be the original System Shock, allowing you to control crouching and leaning by clicking on the character model on the fantastic UI. Thank you, Cuddy. Thank you. I feel like there's a slight amount of trolling going on here, particularly for James, but
that's fair.
James,
it's very
small mechanic.
Okay. Prince of Persia's Rewind. I don't know if that's small, but I would like.
Don't
more
worry,
games
I
to
also
use that.
cheated with that. Like,
Okay.
Can you give me an example of a game which you feel should have had a rewind mechanic that doesn't?
I actually struggle to think of many that I think would be made work. Like, I think
Ico should have a rewind mechanic.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of game. Like, they added it to the most recent Mario Kart, right? Like, you
What?
can you can do it to yourself in multiplayer. You obviously fall behind in the race, but if you fucked up a jump, you can do it again. It's also insane for practicing time trials. Huge improvement, especially in that game where you can like jump onto walls and do all sorts of weird stuff to improve times. Like, you get to practice very, very niche tech very easily with the add additions. So it's a massive improvement to the experience of trying to improve your lap times. I think lots of platformers would just be better if they had this. Like, it basically adds a way to short circuit the pain of having to set up for the attempt again without, like, it doesn't actually make the thing you're trying to do easier. It just lets you get back to trying it again quicker, which, like, I'm kind of at this point where I don't see much value in punishing the player by costing them heaps of time to make them attempt like a little jump again.
So what it does, it can add like a degree of tension, right? Like, if you're moments away from death, it makes it a lot more tense than if you can just fail and restart time and time again. But the thing about Prince of Persia compared to other platformers is that because of their rewind mechanic, they can make the platforming a lot more intensive in terms of precision. So I guess the thing is that because Prince of Persia was built from the ground up with this mechanic in mind, the rewinding is a good fit for it. Other platforming games may need to become a lot more difficult, essentially, to make the mechanic make sense.
The recent Fire Emblem games have this rewind feature for individual turns. Like, you get like 5 or something a map, but I think that helps a lot to smooth out some of the pain of trying to do a playthrough without losing people, but also because, like, I feel like that series encourages you to play that way even if you're not like the kind of person who's played the game 10 times already, because normally
It's like, I've lost a character, I'm going to restart.
Yeah, because most games
Mm.
reserve that kind of challenge mode for repeat playthroughs, whereas I think Fire Emblem kind of encourages you to do it from the very beginning. So I think that added lenience there kind of smooths that out for the new players. The other mechanics that I have are discovery through play. Playing Lunacid made me realize that I really like obfuscation. For example, the most engaged I was with that game was in character creation, where you pick your starting class,
Mm.
and it tells you nothing mechanically about your choice. It just gives you like a vague description. And I honestly found that way more compelling than if they give you the numbers or they tell
Mm.
you exactly what it does. So I kind of like hidden information.
Very interesting, because if you look at, I guess, what RPGs are now, they are very information heavy. To the
Yeah,
point where you look at two weapons and it runs a DPS calculation on them, and you grab the one which has the bigger number, as opposed to, maybe using them both and feeling them out and figuring it out, or
yeah.
reading the description. It's more of a classic role playing way of doing things, the obfuscation of information like that.
Yeah, and you see it a lot in live service games where people will have a fucking meltdown if something new is released and they don't explain exactly like how to use it from the beginning. It's kind of insufferable.
It's funny. This was a huge thing in Binding of Isaac as well. Like Edmund McMillan, when he designed the game, didn't he deliberately didn't include item descriptions for all of the shit. And he made the methods to unlock characters stupid, and he made some characters impossible to really play. Like the
Yeah.
Lost, when it first released, was close, like proper challenge mode to beat the game and get unlocks with it. And people hated it. People got so mad. And he said, I'm just trying to recreate that feeling of playing these games when you were a kid and you didn't have all the information and people hated it. And I was a little disappointed. I mean, not disappointed, but it was interesting that he eventually relented, I guess, and allowed all this stuff to exist. Because I agree with you, there is value in obfuscating this information. It's just we're so information hungry nowadays that it's hard to just chill out and try to play a game without having that information at your disposal.
People's attention spans are a bit shot these days for, not necessarily their own fault, but the kind of the way the landscape has evolved these last few years.
It's more than that though. It's like we've just in general become very good as a community at documenting things. Like you could say that this started with Minecraft, right? It didn't start with Minecraft. It started with other games. But that was a game where having the wiki up on one of your screens was part of the gameplay process in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, because you didn't know how to make things. You had to look up how to make them. And I think that mindset has kind of like crept into most video games, and that there's a wiki for every game, and if you want to know something you can find it. So when a game is resisting that and refusing to tell you, it feels strange. Yeah, and we rail against it
I feel
because
like
it's
there's a
different.
bit of a skill to resisting the temptation there when the information is so obviously available on like the internet, right? Like of just trying to figure
Mm.
it out yourself. Like when we did Zelda 1, I basically refused to look up the answers to where stuff was until I got truly stuck. And that was way more fun to me because of it. I kind of like experiences like that.
Oh. No, I think it's a great answer, Jane. For me, I also unfortunately did not have a small mechanic. I had a big mechanic, but for me, it's 100% the mind map in Pathologic 2, because I think it's a
Oh yeah,
very interesting, different way of creating like a quest log or a journal in a way that's more 3D and easier to pass different ideas and information than your traditional quest log, which honestly, I can't remember the last time like I properly read a quest log. Like a quest log will have 10 to 15 things thinking in it, and it's just a bunch of shit that's creating icons on my map that I'm going to. Having the mind map, which had the smaller bubbles and the larger bubbles and the links connecting them, created a far more cohesive and easier to understand presentation of information than your typical quest log. And I genuinely think more games should try and adapt something similar to this style moving forward.
Yeah, representing quest progression in that graph structure rather than as like a linear like sequence of events to me just makes more sense, because like you'd typically have branching situations, and at that point linear ordering doesn't necessarily capture that, the complexity there, and kind of pigeonholes you into these boring ABC step quests. Yeah, I agree with that. I think, that branching structure is way more easy to interpret and, naturally lets you build complexity without the representation getting really unwieldy, as we see.
Yeah, and there can be dead ends as well. It's like this is the end in this corner, but we're not going to remove it from your screen because it's still a relevant piece of information and it's related to this. We should see more innovation in this space, I guess. To me, this is a very cool way to present information to the player, and I hope more games jump on it. But it's probably, too hard, and we'll keep getting quest logs. Okay, so next question is from Scion Storm. What has been your favorite episode to record this year? Was it because it was a good game or a terrible game you had a blast riffing on? I'm pretty sure we'll have the same answer for this one, James.
Maybe. So this year was interesting for me. Some years I like a lot of the games, some years I'm like kind of mediocre. This year was very up and down. Like, I either loved the game we recorded or I hated it pretty much. There wasn't too many in-betweens. I think we probably both have the same answer, which was, I think, going to be Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it was a card game and we finally got to talk about that on the episode.
Yep, exactly correct.
Yeah. We kind of wanted to do a card game for ages, but we hadn't found a good one. That was fun to talk about. Like, I had a lot of fun preparing and writing notes and then discussing.
I played the game a lot. Like, that was one of the games where I was just when I wasn't playing it, I was thinking about it, and I would come home and I'd just play it for 2 to 3 hours, just jamming games. Yeah, it was really fun. We had some trepidation because we weren't sure how good of an episode it would be to listen to, but no doubt it was the most fun I had, like doing an episode about a game.
I was also quite happy with how a few of the recordings turned out. I was happy with the Perfect Dark episode, I think went great. Same with Parasite Eve. Like, I didn't love playing both of those games, but they were both fun to talk about. In terms of my favorite episodes for like the game to play, by far Ghost Trick. I loved that game. That was the highlight of my whole year, was playing through that. Maybe even more than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode. I also had a lot of fun playing Reciteer and Ico. But yeah, Ghost Trick and Yu-Gi-Oh! For me were definitely the standouts.
It's interesting. I had a lot more fun with Baldur's Gate, honestly, and I think that
ended up being my least favorite game of the whole year, I think.
Yeah, I think I just got a lot out of the experimentation angle, a lot more than you did. Just messing around with all the spells and stuff. I found a lot of fun. And I guess if you told me like you've seen a lot of this stuff before, so it wasn't as much of a journey of discovery for you. But for me, every time I found a new spell, it was something fun to try. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with Baldur's Gate, I think. Episodes like Reciteer and Ico, I had less of a good time with.
Fair.
Not that I don't think we played any like truly trash games this season.
Warcraft 2
probably
was and Tachyon were like almost there, I think. But
Tachyon less so. The thing is, I didn't feel that way about Warcraft 2. Warcraft 2 I had an okay time with. Tachyon was probably less fun, I think. That was probably the least enjoyable game.
Yeah. Most mid, probably Vanquish for me. It was like in the middle of the pack.
Yeah.
But still good.
Vanquish did some interesting stuff,
yeah.
Right?
Like, I think it was a pretty good year overall for game picks. There was like a lot of... We pretty much didn't touch the same genre twice. It was good.
He then asks, what is your favorite beverage to enjoy when playing games of the show? For me, I'm not a beer drinker. I like a cider. I like a whiskey. Usually, if I'm playing a game for the show, more a cider because I need the stamina to consume a drink over a long period of time. If I try and drink whiskey while playing a game for the show, I'm probably going to be drinking way too much whiskey.
Yeah, my answer's coffee for this because normally I'll wake up early on the weekend and try to smash them out before my energy wanes down and I have no motivation to keep playing. So I normally try to wake up early and then like get myself going with caffeine and then just plow through it. I find it's hard to play through in the evenings after work sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm the opposite. I'm more of an evening gamer, so shouldn't be drinking coffee at 10 p.m. But mostly I avoid that. And finally, he says, "Do you have any New Year's resolution when it comes to gaming?" For me, it's to finish more games. I think I play a good number of games each year, but a lot of them I kind of grow bored with and drop off and then go to waste some time watching YouTube or doing something else. When I would like to this year just lock in a bit more, be a bit more dedicated, get stuck in and play games to completion. So I'm hoping to finish, an extra 5 games this year than I did in the previous year just by locking in a bit more and smashing them out.
Yeah, my goal is to get through some longer titles by playing them in. Because we did this show for 7 years, right? I have this mindset that, like, because before we'd started the show, I actually didn't get to the end of games very often. I would get like 80-60% of the way through and stop and then maybe restart again and never actually finish them. And then since we did the show and I've had to finish 137 start to finish, like the way I consume games shifted over the years. So now it's more like I've got this constant feeling that I have to finish something within a couple weeks or so. But I realize this gets quite... If you've got a longer title, this can be quite mentally draining. Notably, I had this game, Reverse Collapse Codename Bakery, which is probably the hardest game I've ever played. It took me about 140, 160 hours to beat it, and it was really a problem, this mindset that I have to finish it in a short amount of time when it was taking me like 3 hours per level, and there's like 100 levels or so. So I found that getting halfway, then stopping for a few months, and then coming back to it in a few months is perfectly viable to do. I've been doing this recently with Crosscode, which is a game I've been really enjoying, but it's very long and the gameplay is a bit repetitive over a very long period of time. So if I just leave it for a few months and come back, then I'll have the stamina to keep going till the end. And that lets me, do the show game as well on the side. So I'm going to try not to have this like must finish in one go mentality this year, I think.
Well, it's interesting because I guess my problem is that I feel like if I leave a game for too long, I'm just not going to come back to it. Like it's hard to have that mindset, particularly. I guess the thing is, I kind of enjoy games that are a bit more difficult, and you feel like you lose your muscle memory. Yeah. It's been too long since you've played that game. Can you imagine playing, 2/3 of the way through Hollow Knight Silk Song, taking a 3 or 4 month break, and then trying to come back to it at that point? You're really going to struggle because you've kind of like launched yourself into the harder content with a massive break. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It just, to me, seems challenging.
I took a couple-year break on my Elden Ring playthrough. I still haven't got quite to the end yet. And yeah, restarting halfway through was hard. But I've also played a lot of From's titles, so it wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was definitely bad with Reverse Collapse, because that game's like... Now, that game needs a rollback turns feature, because I think some levels when I restarted, it's like I would do individual turns like 8 times before getting it right. Because it's like a turn-based tactics game that is so hard that it's pretty much a puzzle game. Like if you do one wrong move, you just lose the whole mission. I think it's achievable. I just feel like with the way memory works, it takes a bit to wake up, but it will come back. But because it takes a bit to wake up, it feels like you're going to be lost. But then if you give it like an hour, you'll be fine again.
Yeah, you just have to be prepared to do it. Yeah. Okay. Well, good resolution. Definitely, we don't get to play the super longer games for the pod, so you got to play them somewhere.
So the next question I have on my list is from Wink, and they ask, have you guys considered, this is a good one actually, have you guys considered adding a numerical score to your reviews at the end, or do you feel that there's a good reason not to? Now, I want to jump in first here, because I feel like I have this gut feeling that you're strongly opposed to this, but I don't care either way actually on this. And the reason I say this is because while I don't really think that the numbers mean anything, I do think that, over time I've noticed that we've had these episodes where we spend half the episode being negative, but then we actually recommend it and it's like a 9, and we're only being critical because we like it so much. I think that becomes more obvious if you have a number. That said, I think I prefer that people listen to what we're saying than focus too much on the number. So I don't really care either way, to be honest.
Honestly, James, I feel like exactly the same way. I don't think a number does any harm, but I'm not really sure what it adds. Basically, the reason we use numbers is the same reason we do anything. We want to be able to try to summarize our opinions in a nice and concise way. And a number is just trying to distill your opinion down to a number, just something super simple. Like, a number isn't going to give you as much context as a sentence. A paragraph will be better. A 2-hour discussion on a podcast is even better. I don't think it really hurts if we could do a number. That's great, but I don't know how much it really adds, right? Like, I don't know how much it adds. Particularly, like, I think that our latest episode, Warcraft 2, really illustrates the problem with a number, which is that Warcraft 2, for me, if I had to give it a number, it would probably be like a 6 out of 10. But that doesn't mean I'm recommending it to everyone. It's that for the specific RTS fanatics who have an appreciation for history and Warcraft, they'll probably have a decent time with this game. But to most people who don't like RTSs, it's like a 0. So using a single number is just getting rid of all the context in a way that might do more harm than good.
I'd be more okay with like categories. We could have a category that's like, it's one of those 7 out of 10s that some people are going to think a 10 is a 10 out of 10, right? Like, that's a...
But at the end of the day, you're just adding more context to the number when you explain that, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go back and add a number to all of our games, but do people really desperately need that? I don't know. I don't really think so.
Also, my memory's actually quite bad, so I don't know how... I feel like I'd have to re-listen to the episode to remember how I felt about
remember your
games.
opinion.
Yeah.
How do I feel about this game? I don't know. Let me listen to the podcast to find out. Yeah. So yeah, ultimately, I don't feel super strongly about it, but if people were demanding it in droves, I would probably happily just start adding numbers, but I don't think it adds that much.
Yes, thanks for the question. Interesting.
What was the next question, James? Mine are a bit out of order now.
So the next question comes from Hopefully So, and they say, "Hi, James and Patrick. Thank you both for another year of episodes. You're welcome. I've noticed that the ethos of the show, setting aside nostalgia to explore whether games in the past are playable and fun according to modern standards, is starting to creep into my own gaming habits. Okay, I wonder if you'd be able to talk a little bit about the origin story of this angle. Did this critical approach come from one of you specifically? Can either of you pinpoint a moment for you where it clicked? Or is there a specific game or experience that, while nostalgic, just wasn't satisfying?" Okay, so this is another case of my memory being bad, but my gut feeling here is that this mostly came from Patrick and I went along with it.
I think yes, I was probably the instigator, and because you and I had so many good discussions in person before, I thought you'd be a good person to discuss these things with on the podcast. So I do have a specific thing, and the answer is shockingly, I don't know if I've told you this much. You know, I've played the first like half of a lot of the early Final Fantasy games.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So I would use emulators on my PC, and I would, because I kind of had a bad PC to start with, so I couldn't run modern titles. So I turned to emulators and was emulating stuff. And I remember emulating Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6. I kind of have vague memories of these games. I don't know heaps about them. But I remember playing them and not hating them. I'd play through them a bit, but I didn't really get it. From a storytelling and writing perspective, I definitely didn't get it. I didn't understand why everyone was saying these games have really good writing, because compared to the stuff I was reading, you know, novels in the exact same genre as this was pretty basic stuff with not very interesting characters, not particularly good dialogue. It felt like, you know, stuff for kids. Not that that's a bad thing, but I didn't understand the way they were getting praised for their writing. And then with the gameplay, I didn't really understand it either. Like, I didn't loathe JRPG combat in the same way that I do now, but I was like, I'm just kind of progressing in a linear fashion, finding the next weapon upgrade or armor upgrade and equipping it to my character and just moving through it. So I played these games. I thought, okay, they're okay. The gameplay's whatever. The story's kind of whatever. But then you read what people were saying about these games, and it wasn't they're pretty solid, enjoyable games. They're decent to play through. It was effusive praise. It was 10 out of 10s. There's people saying, this is the best game ever made. This is my favorite game, yada, yada, yada. And I just didn't get it. I felt like an alien. I couldn't reconcile the experience that I had in the modern day playing these video games with the way that people were talking about them. And so I guess this kind of began my whole thought process for like what we could do on the podcast. It was, you know, when you actually sit down and play these games, what is it actually like? Like, is it the way that people talk about it, heavy in nostalgia, or is it something completely different? So that was the half of it that was, you know, more negative, this bewilderment at the difference between, I guess, online perception and my personal experience. The other side of it was a lot more selfish. There were some old games that I really, really, really wanted to play. And, you know, Thief being a really good example of one that I wanted to do wanted to play forever. But it was hard to find the motivation to push myself to play it. So I'm like, Archimedean Dynasty.
Yeah.
So I was like, this will be like a good excuse or good motivation to check out some old games that I want to play, because I'll be better able to push past the awkwardness and difficulty of playing, you know, of the more older style and interface if I've got a good thing to push me forward. So yeah, I think that was the origin of the show. And I will say that bewilderment I have, it still exists to this day. Like, I still think it's something that's not properly acknowledged.
I still don't really think I can find a reviewer that I just agree with everything that they like or dislike. So I find it hard to know if I'm going to like something. Although I do think that it's easy for me to spot games that I think I'll like. More and more these days, it has to be something weird, though. Like, I often have not seen... It has to be something I haven't seen before, because I've played so much now. Which can be hard, but also rewarding. Or, you know, it could be something that's similar to something you've played ages ago, like was the case with when Expedition 33 came out last year, which was just like... Yeah, these guys liked Final Fantasy X as much as I did, so it's good.
I mean, that's kind of why I'm so looking forward to Gloomwood, because if there's one game I'm excited for coming out, James, it's Gloomwood. I'm so keen. That game, it's like the game was made
it's
for me.
Thief-like game, right?
It's Thief plus Resident Evil is how I
Yeah.
would describe it. They've literally on the hardest difficulty, because I've played a good chunk of what's available in the early access. I've had to cut myself off because I want to wait for the full game now. They have limited save items and safe rooms. So on the hardest
cool.
difficulty, you need to consume an item to save in save rooms in a Thief-like game with survival mechanics
That's
and a
pretty
limited
good, yeah.
inventory. Yeah, it's like they just understand the kind of game that I'm after. You combine that with Thief's mechanics, and yeah, it's looking real good. So
the next question from Hopefully So was also, do either of you tend to evaluate other forms of media in the same way? Yeah, I don't tend to put things on a pedestal just because they came out a while ago. Yeah, I do, like, more than we talk about on the show, I do, like, respect things when they were made ages ago, but it doesn't necessarily, for me, make it worth to play now, right? Like, you can just appreciate it as a distance. Like, you can have things that are more valuable in like watching a video about the game rather than playing it yourself. It just depends on the kind of game, I guess, specifically.
and the thing is I just want to point out that the perspective we bring to the show, I really want to emphasize, it's not the only way to look at video games. It's like a specific hat and perspective that we wear. James and I both have a lot of love and respect for the history of video games. I'm watching, documentaries and no clip things about things being made, and I love it. It's always so interesting, and I've got a lot of respect for these developers. It's just on the show, we're wearing the hat of modern perspective, looking at the end experience, and that way we've got a little bit more focus. But it's not the only way, and thank God it's not the only way to look at video games, because that would be a very bleak world indeed.
Alrighty, so next is a question from R2 Sinus. Thank you for your question. In your free time gaming, do you sometimes have games you really want to play, but then when you start, you kind of don't feel it, or you feel stressed, but at the same time feel like you should keep playing it? I get this a lot with RPGs, which I used to love playing, but also heavily neglected in the past years due to the time requirement usually involved. Now there are so many in my backlog that I have this need or want to finish them, but when I start, I feel burnt out in the first 1 to 2 hours. I get this feeling relatively often where you feel like you should do something, but then when you go to do it, you're not really enjoying it, so you put it down for a while. And I don't know where this feeling comes from. It's always annoyed me when I've thought about it, because, like, realistically, this is my gaming time. I should just be doing what I want to play. But then there's things that, like, I feel like I should like, but don't, or especially with things that other people recommend me play, and I play them and I don't like them, but I said I'd play it. I don't have a good answer for what you can do about it other than to be more honest with yourself and just, like, identify that you don't actually want to do it, but you're just telling yourself you do due to some, I guess, I can't speak for you, right? But it just feels like you've got this idea in your head that for whatever reason you should play it to satisfy some obligation socially or something, but your actual, like, desire to play it just isn't there, and that's fine.
Yeah, and sometimes it's okay to play it, and sometimes it's not, and it's your decision at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
For me, there is a game that I have that I bought. I played it a bit, and I really, really want to play it, and it's because of the buzz about it and all of the interesting stuff. And it's called Void Stranger. Have you heard of this game, James?
I have that, yes. I started playing that mid last year, actually.
Yeah, so Void Stranger is like a puzzle game, and it's apparently a game that has layers and layers and layers and layers to it. But to get to the second layer, you need to go through the whole thing without dying, I'm pretty sure. And it's just, I'm like, I really want to play this game to get all to this cool, mysterious stuff that everyone's talking about, but I just haven't been able to summon the strength to actually sit there and lock in for 3 or 4 hours to get the first ending.
Yeah, that does not look kind of fun. one nice thing is that if I have a game like that I want to play but don't want to play, I can just pick it for the show and then I like have to play it. Like I actually have to play it because of a real like obligation. That makes it a lot easier. Just start a game book club. That's how to get through your backlog.
It genuinely is. Like, that is a good way to do these things. But yeah, if ever you're just absolutely hating it, don't force yourself. Unless you have a podcast, then yes, continue to force yourself so you can complain about it later.
Next question from Super Pizza Cat. Thank you for your question. How do you guys keep track of games you've played and games you'd like to play? Do you have spreadsheets or notebooks, Steam wishlist categories, or do you not track them at all? So for the games we've played on the show, it's nice because, we have this listing of our episodes somewhere on the internet, and I can double check on my file for all the recordings I've got, so that's easy. Games that I've played, mostly in my Steam library. Games that I want to play, I've actually been using my wishlist more and more. But yeah, I normally just keep like a vague mental list and picks, because like outside of the show, because we do like kind of this rigid structure, I tend to just like pick whatever I feel like on the given day if it's something like very spontaneous normally outside of the show.
Yeah, I utilize my Steam wish list a lot. It's quite good. My sister every year will buy me a bunch of these weird indie games that I've wish listed. So the Steam sale comes in and then I get 9 of these random weird, experimental indie games straight into my library, which I always appreciate. And then we've also, of course, got the Google Docs folder that we use to list all the games we're potentially interested in playing, along with a playtime. It's quite interesting. We'll get to it later, but the game that we chose for our next episode, which is a cheat episode, we got there by shortlisting a bunch of games, then striking them out one by one, which I thought was actually a really good way of doing it. So I might actually consider doing that in the future as well.
Yeah, it was good. I was like kind of shocked in some of the games you said no to, but I was happy with the final result.
More on that later. And then Super Pizza Cat asks, are there any video game lines you find yourself thinking or even saying out loud in everyday life? Long ago in my food service days, we used to say some of the peon lines like work, work, when shit had to get done. Similar one-liners still pop into my head on occasion, lol. Any for you, James? I have one that is super specific and weird.
Oof, that one comes up pretty often. Or
what's oof from?
Like the doom noise when you get hit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Metal Gear, definitely the most common one. Like, that game has so many funny voice lines.
Hey, you're pretty good.
Remember the basics of CQC.
One I actually say a lot is, so have you ever heard of a game called Heroes of New Earth, James?
Absolutely, I've heard of Heroes of New Earth.
So this isn't even like a character like I enjoyed playing particularly or anything, but there's a hero called Nomad, and Nomad has a voice line where he says, "Yonder I wander." And because of my work, I wander around a lot, to go from place to place. I'm always thinking to myself, yonder I wander. And for whatever reason, that has stuck with me forever. And I'm always thinking it to myself or saying it while everyone gives me weird looks. So hyper specific. I don't know why, but yeah, that one's just stuck with me.
I always remember later in that game's life, they went really hard in the shit talking direction. Like Dota did that as well. But they released all these voice lines that would just annoy people.
The unicorn one?
Yeah, the unicorn ones, like Rainbow Rampage. People mention that a lot too. It's funny.
What I remember most about Hon's later days is when they started adding this thing where you could pay for early access to a hero. And then they released a hero where you could press a button to double its stats. And
Gemini,
some people just gained like 700 MMR in one night before they fixed it. And it was like, man, this game's doomed.
Yeah, so like Warcraft 3, Metal Gear, I think those are the two most common ones probably. It's a good question. Metal Gear Rising is a great one as well. Well,
I mean, basically, anytime Senator Armstrong opens his mouth is a quotable line. I need to play that game. I've never played Metal Gear Rising, James.
that's crazy. There's that boss that monologues to you about memes for like 2 minutes.
Yeah, you need to pick that. You need to pick that for the show. How old is that game? Probably like 2015, 2014 or something. 2013. I was close.
Oh,
Hey, it's
God,
not that far off.
Yeah, it's getting only a couple of years. Yeah, we can do it. All right, we'll have to.
Anyway, thanks for the question. What's your next one, James? James, sorry.
So the next one comes from Lachlan, who I went to school with, actually. Thank you for the question. After giving Freelancer flack during the episode on it, and Lachlan was the one who recommended we do Freelancer, I have found it interesting that it has been referenced on many other episodes, often positively. So my question is...
It's true.
When did you finally realize that Freelancer is the best game ever made? And what made you come to the realization that your opinion was factually wrong, Patrick? Seriously, guys, what games have you flipped your opinion on after time or comparison to other games?
It's a good question.
Yeah, so when did you realize your opinion was wrong?
Well, okay, so I think it's a good question because we definitely, like, particularly on the Tachyon the Fringe episode, I felt like multiple times we said, man, Freelancer was better than this. Kind of sheepishly. And I think the reason Freelance is interesting because I think it's a good example of how aesthetics and I guess the emotional feeling that a game can emit resonates in our memory a lot more than moment-to-moment gameplay. See, Freelancer was like a fun video game when you were shooting things, but that was not really a big part of the game. A lot of the game was just loading screens, I guess, and the strategic macro layer of being a freelancer was essentially non-existent. But I think that the aesthetics of it was so beautiful and that the gameplay itself when it happened was solid enough that they kind of loomed larger in my memory. So I do wonder, James, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this. How, if we'd played Freelancer and Tachyon back to back, do you think that our opinion would be the same?
I think so. Now, the reason I think that this has changed over time is memory compression. Basically, when I think of Freelancer, the first thing that comes to mind is my ship in the vastness of space, just traveling and listening to voiced dialogue and just liking the vibe. That's my first memory of it. That was true. The problem was that experience generally lasted a couple of minutes, and then you had to sit in that like holding W position for another like 20 minutes.
I was going through rings, wasn't it? Like just going through ring after
you'd
ring.
go through ring, and then you'd go in a direction, and then
you'd move to the next ring. Yeah.
This is the only game that I would get so bored that I would like actively pull my phone out while holding W.
Yeah, me too.
Like I would like sit on my phone while holding W. Now that part of the memory I think disappears over time, and it's really easy to just remember the first because that experience is fun and immersive and like good vibes for like a couple minutes. So the first time you conjure that memory back up, it's like, oh, this is fresh and exciting again, which it is, but you forget just how much wasted time is actually in the entire experience. So like the combat's great, the visuals can be great, and it's fun for a while, but I still think that playing the game start to finish, there's a lot of time in there that's not very fun. It's just easy to forget in hindsight. I do still think it's like 10 times better than Tachyon, though.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot more cohesive at the end of the day. And I think that, the combat in Freelancer is better. More arcadey, but more fun.
It's way better, yeah.
Yeah. That memory compression. In fact, I just remembered how I had my phone with me and was just on my phone for literally 3 to 4 minutes sometimes while playing that game, which at the time to me was like getting stabbed in the eyes with forks. So Um, basically, the parts of the game that are decent and freelancer are obviously good. It's just that I wish that they had done something about that. I should have downloaded a mod maybe to get rid of that or something. There must be something.
In terms of games that you've changed your opinion on,
Hmm.
um,
I have two.
okay, you go, because I don't think I have one really.
So for me, the biggest one, and I think that you'll probably agree when I say this, is Vagrant Story. I
Okay.
think that this game, for all of its problems that I had with it, particularly the UI, I think it was doing something so interesting and unique that my respect for it has just gone up and up and up with every game we've played. Particularly now that we've played a few JRPGs. Um, the way all the systems come together in the end is kind of a mess, but at the same time, yeah, all I can say is that I think it's very cool how ambitious they were with Vagrant
Mm.
Story and trying to combine all these things into such an interesting product. Does that mean that like my opinion on playing the game has dramatically changed? Like for me, not really. I don't think this is a game that I would enjoy much differently if I sat down and play it. But I guess I would give it a different kind of recommendation. And in fact, I'd recommend it to a whole bunch more people as opposed to just saying this game is bad. So my first one is Vagrant Story, is a game that I think does so many interesting things that I think it has a lot of appeal for a specific group of players.
I actually do have an answer now that I've looked through the list again. Super
Yeah.
Metroid, I think, is a game I have tons of respect for. And whenever I think about this game, it's normally in a positive light because it's so well designed. Especially, this is one of the games where I'm like, for its time, the design's insane. Yeah.
Mm.
But I do remember playing it and really not having fun and just being
Mm.
bored. But the way the world fits together and the way that you get upgrades and the cool twist in the middle, like the gameplay twist, makes it like a game I have a lot of respect for. I just probably still wouldn't want to play it again, but I think of it positively, even though I didn't recommend it on the episode.
So my other game is F-Zero GX.
Hmm.
I didn't say I hated this game, but I had a really hard time
It
with
was
it.
too
This
hard,
game
right?
kicked
It
my
was
ass.
like we shouldn't have
It was,
done that as a. Okay, that's a great answer for an earlier question that was like, what game should you have done first? Any racing game that wasn't F-Zero GX. That shouldn't have been the first one we did. Let's be real.
yeah, it really. I mean, it was even harder for me because you've at least got a bit of racing game experience, but it absolutely kicked my ass. But like the more I've seen about it and the more I think about it, I think it might just be like a 10 out of 10 game. Like I think that like as a racing game, it's the premium version of what it is, and like just thinking about how it was to play it, it was so much fun. It was so fluid, and the risk reward inherent in it, and the speed of
So
it,
difficult, yeah.
like I think it's just like an incredibly good game, and I think I could play it again today and I would enjoy it even more. So yeah, F-Zero GX is a game which I didn't hate, but I think that in hindsight it's probably just one of the best racing games ever made. So yeah, that one stands out.
A couple from Kugel, thank you for the questions. Are there any games that fall outside of the 15-year-old restriction that you guys are dying to do on the show? Yeah, I have three answers for this. One I think is really fascinating from a game, or four answers actually. One that is
Four answers.
super. I'll be quick. The first is Barber is You, which I think is just a
Oh,
fascinating game, like design wise. Way too hard, but absolutely brain melting, like
I'm too
impressive.
stupid for the harder levels of that
It's
game.
so it's
I
so
love it,
cool.
but
Yeah.
I eventually hit a level where I just was like, I'm too stupid for this. Like I can't. Like this is going to take me like multiple hours to figure out this one screen.
The next two I put up for doing this year, but Patrick rejected them. One was Darkest Dungeon, which I think I would like if I, could sit down and play through it. The other was Factorio, which I just think is an excellent game that I'd love to talk about. We haven't really done like an engineering style game.
I just want to say I did reject them, but not in a malicious way.
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
just I was just trying to cut down a list. I think those are both cool games I'd love to play as well.
And the last one is Etrian 4 because it's like probably actually my favorite game, not born of nostalgia.
Hey, Etrian 4 is interesting from what you've told me. I wouldn't mind giving that a try.
Yeah, it's long. I had to is one of those games I had to put down for like 4 months and then come back to.
So unlike James, I have one answer because I'm a far more reasonable host. And my answer is also my favorite game ever, which is Outer Wilds.
Okay.
I said before that my favorite thing in video games is exploration. And Outer Wilds is a game that is about exploration and about rewarding exploration. And there's always so much cool stuff to find. So I love Outer Wilds to pieces. I am so excited for whatever the studio makes next. If it's half as good as Outer Wilds, it'll still be probably the best game I've played that year. So I love it to pieces. It's the best.
I should play through it. Everyone tells me it's amazing.
It is. I mean, it's a free form puzzle game. It's just great. Like the closest thing to it that I've played is like The Witness. But The Witness is so like rigid in how it's designed, whereas Outer Wilds just feels so much more freeing and it feels to have the spirit of being a first person exploration game so much more than The Witness. And I love The Witness, but that's a lot more.
I'm excited for Jay Blow's next game that's coming out in a month or so.
Oh, really? It's that soon?
Yeah, it's pretty soon. Same with Mugenics, which is finally coming out. Those are the two. That
that's coming out in Feb, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like they're both like a month away. I'm super excited for both of them.
Well, Mugenics is Macmillan attempting to fuse Into the Breach with Isaac mechanics, which
he's super cool. And then Kugel's next question was: are there any games you chose to do on the show as a joke, expecting them to be bad from the start, but were pleasantly surprised? Now, I've always threatened Patrick with Superman 64, but I haven't, had the gall to actually go through with it yet. Maybe one day. Don't count yourself safe just yet. I don't think I've picked a game that I was like, this is going to be bad, let's do it. I've picked lots of games where I'm like, this looks weird. I wasn't hoping that any of them would be bad because, I still have to play through it from start to finish.
I think there is one game, though, that felt to me the most like a meme, and that game is Space Channel 5.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of, yeah. But honestly, everyone was telling me I have to play it, though, I thought it was pretty worthwhile still.
But this was the thing. I was definitely pleasantly surprised by Space Channel 5. I think that even the very ending, which is ridiculous, is something I was on board with, because the game is so silly, but it embraces it in a way that's very fun. It's kind of like Katamari Damacy in that way, where it's more about the spectacle than anything else.
The thing is, we had played a few years prior Sly Cooper 1, which had that boss in the third level that used the same mechanic as the whole of Space Channel 5, like that weird rhythm game.
Or repeat, yeah.
Yeah, and I knew that was fun, so, I thought it was going to be fun. If a bit
I thought it wasn't going to... Well, the thing was, I thought that the aesthetic would be a real turn off for me, basically, and that's what I was pleasantly surprised by, that I didn't mind it, and I actually had a lot of fun with the aesthetic of it and the story.
What about Typing of the Dead?
Oh, I knew that game was going to be great.
Yeah. Oh, what about Ecstatica? That was a recommendation.
Yeah. Thanks, Sinus. Thanks. I was hoping it wouldn't be that bad, and then I saw the controls.
It was an experience.
It was an experience for sure.
Yeah. What about Bad Mojo?
Hey, that game was actually pretty solid.
Yeah, I feel like that game is so unmarketable though.
All I can think of is the Jim Carrey knockoff.
Yeah.
So good. Good question though.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So next, from Lions in Beta from Nostalgia Goggles. Thank you for the question. Do emulator handhelds hold any fascination for you? If so, why or why not? Not a ton really. I feel like I would at this point, unless you mean specifically like a Steam Deck, I don't see the appeal. Like otherwise, like my favorite retro handhelds I already have real copies of, like my Game Boys and my DSs and stuff. I feel like I'd be more interested in getting like an old CRT and playing games on that. But you can still like emulate scan lines and stuff manually. Like to me that's more interesting than playing on like
an
new
emulator
hardware.
and like a modern take on retro hardware. Yeah, I mean, like the thing is that a Steam Deck can play new games and it can emulate all the old games. So the main advantage of like an emulated modern like an analog pocket or whatever is that it's smaller, right?
Yeah.
Like a Steam Deck's a big bulky thing, which is fine when you're like lying in bed, less so if you are on a bus. But generally, if I'm in a situation where I'm on a bus or a train, I'm just on my phone, or if it were a hypothetical long train ride, I'd probably have a laptop. Like I just wouldn't really use them. So I think that the other thing is that I just don't have the nostalgia associated with them because I didn't have a handheld growing up. So I can see how it could call back to nostalgia in games you enjoyed in your childhood, but that doesn't apply for me either. So yeah, for me, it's just not really what I'm into.
It's a good question though.
Because obviously there's a market.
There's this sort of trend where people will release new games targeted at that old hardware. I think that's more interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a fun idea.
Because they have to like program in the original language and build for the limitations of it, like, but with modern design sensibilities, it's very.
If you were a company that was making games targeted at the PS2 and re-released a PS2 emulator, maybe I'd be interested then. I think that's what would get me.
I've got another question here. Oh, I like this question a lot because I've got a very fun answer.
Okay.
This is from Vexus, and he asks, what gaming discussion analysis content titillated you this year? Okay. So, well, it's not really discussion or analysis, but my favorite, I guess, phenomenon in gaming this year was horse race tests. Have you heard of horse race tests, James?
No.
So I'll try and keep this brief because there's a bit of context, but basically someone made this thing where it's like a video in Flash or whatever with these little dumb looking sprites bouncing around the screen in a maze, and whichever one bounced through the maze to the carrot at the end of the maze wins. And these are like mazes with different ways to go and everything. And the race for someone to get to the carrot at the end takes about, 2 to 3 minutes because they've all got slightly different jagged edges on their sprite. So they're bouncing at different angles and bouncing off each other. Pretty boring, right? Like there's not much there. The thing that made this amazing is how the community started to construct this elaborate narrative and did art and everything about these stupid little sprites. Eventually, as is common, turning them into anime girls and had all these narratives about, this one backstabbing this one. I don't know what you would call this in general, but this thing where the community takes something stupid and then invents this elaborate narrative and pours their heart and soul into this elaborate artwork it always fascinates me. And the last time I can really remember this happening and being just swept up in it is Twitch Plays Pokemon. I don't know if you're familiar with that, James.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Know all about that.
Yeah. So it was exactly the same thing, which Twitch Plays Pokemon. People looked at all of these random actions that were being taken and they just invented these ridiculous stories and it was exactly the same with this horse race test thing. So it ran for a few weeks and it was so fun. I'll link a video to it that summarizes everything that happened. in the show notes so you guys can check it out yourself. But to me, I love this whole thing where we kind of get something out of nothing. It's always funny to watch.
That's a good answer. See, yeah, the most kind of content that I was consuming, I consumed in terms of like ongoing games that get played, I consume a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh content regularly. Because I keep up to date with it online. Recently introduced a new format which uses a points system for card values. So like powerful cards get more points. You can only put 100 points in your deck, which sparked a lot of discussion about what points should we give things, what's appropriate. And there was all these cards that are historically super powerful that everyone was like, this needs a lot of points. And even with 3 points or something, people weren't playing it in decks. So that kind of was interesting, like seeing the shifts in certain card designs. Other than that, I consumed some talks about board game design recently that were kind of fun. I watched an old video recently. There's a board game called Root, which famously...
That's the asymmetrical factions, right?
Yeah, that is, yeah.
I'm keen to give that one a try. It seems fascinating to me.
I played it recently. It's really fun. It's very king-makey in that pretty much the other... like, when someone wins, it'll be after, like, 4 people backstabbing each other. It's very political and very interactive, and the creator gave a talk a while ago about what the impact is on your game when you make it this way. Does it kind of undermine like competitive integrity if it's not really about each person playing to win, but rather trying to monitor the other people and making sure that the other people don't win and then eventually someone does. And he sort of talks about like how he's less interested in the balance and more interested in the game's ability to tell stories, which I think it does really well. I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, stuff like that. Been very busy with work this last year, so I honestly didn't consume as much as I had in previous years.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. You kind of get, with a lot of the more like in-depth discussion and theory crafting and stuff, you kind of get sucked into your bubble.
Yeah.
You're super deep into Yu-Gi-Oh, right? So that stuff about the value of cards in a meta is super interesting and specific to you. For me, I've been super sucked into competitive StarCraft Brood War purely as a spectator. So I've been learning about the different players and their play styles and the different strategies, because Brood War is an incredibly mapped out video games in terms of tech and strategies and what counters what. It's very funny because what'll happen is Artosis is the main caster, and it will be at like the 7-minute mark, and he will predict exactly what the pro player is going to do next. He's like, oh yeah, so at this point he's going to be adding 3 factories, and the guy right on cue adds 3 factories, and this is after several back and forths. And I find that kind of like deep dive into Brood War super interesting and fascinating, but it's harder to sell to people outside your bubble.
Oh yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very niche. It's like very hard to like find anyone else that'll go that deep with you on something like that.
Thank God for the internet. So Vexus, yeah, great question. And yeah, please do check out Horse Race Test. It's so funny. So, well, it's not funny, but what the community did is funny, and this video is good at illustrating that. So Vexus then asks or says, you've become even more older, wiser, and discerning in the intervening years since your inaugural episode. I'm unsure about that, but thank you. Are there any entries you'd like to revisit with this new context? We kind of covered this one before where we were talking about F-Zero GX and Vagrant Story, but thank you for the question.
I would like to do Battle Network again, actually. I feel like
interesting.
Got a lot of moving parts, so it's like hard to talk about. I feel like I could do a better job.
For me, it's Banjo-Kazooie, which I just think is a victim of us doing the show, like that being the second episode.
We should do Banjo-Tooie then. Yeah, let's go.
I mean, like I hadn't played many 3D platformers, and I didn't really have the I didn't really have the brain or the structure or the context to review that properly. So that's one that's always stood out to me as being like, I'm not sure I want to revisit it, but I wish I had done a better job.
Yeah, for me, I'd like to revisit Ghost Trick. I think we could do another. I just wish that game had a second game.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking that it doesn't.
There's
right?
no way for it to get one either. Yeah,
they just went back to making Ace Attorney slop.
Didn't you play all those?
I did. Yeah, listen, the thing about Ace Attorney is that like they have a certain structure to them, which is very repetitive, and it feels like the games are just filled with filler content. Like it's just so much filler bullshit. Then you get to do the fun thing, and you're back to the filler stuff. And to be clear, I played a lot of them while watching chess, and these were 6-hour-long chess games, so I needed something to do while they were spending 20 minutes on a move. But yes.
Vexus ends his question with a second small question, which is, are you tired? Yes.
Yes. Being an adult sucks.
Yeah, being an adult sucks. I just want to play video games.
It's good though. I can afford any video game I want now, which is nice, but yes, I am tired.
Give me back the energy I had as a child.
Give me back the time. Just give me money as a child. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Just, okay. Then we have a question and some questions from Wing. So Wing asks, what have been the most mechanically and conceptually creative games each of you has ever played? For example, Katamari's weird controls, Psychonauts levels, or Pokemon Snap's entire premise. And did this creativity work to create a fun gaming experience?
I already mentioned the game, but I had Barbara's You here as well. I don't know if it actually creates a fun experience for long, because it gets really hard really quickly. But it's super cool.
Yeah, it's such a simple concept as well, and it's so
abstract though.
It's so clever, right?
Yeah, you mentioned Katamari as well. That's definitely up there as one of the just all-time great designs. Portal as well, I think, is a good answer for this too.
Portal is actually a fantastic answer, because I remember when the orange box was coming out and I saw the trailer for Portal. That was all I wanted to play. Yeah. Like I was like, to me, that was brain bending just watching it happen. And now portals are in so many video games now. Like they're so normalized as a concept, but at the time, that was a revolution in terms of how you could travel 3D space.
One of the things they mentioned in that board games talk was like how with Roots, like because it's a European board game, it's got like the little wooden meeple, and how Roots ones have little eyes on them. And he's like, it's like how it makes it like 10 times more easy to connect with them if they have eyes. And they brought up the companion cube in Portal, like how it's just, they put a love heart on it and nothing else. And then they made you burn it.
It was, I think that's underselling it, because they also, like there's GLaDOS's dialogue and the whole concept of you bringing it with you throughout the level. But yeah, I do agree that we're suckers basically. We're idiots.
Loss aversion's a powerful thing.
So the answer I had for this is Antichamber. And Antichamber is a puzzle game, and I think the most interesting thing about Antichamber as a puzzle game is that you have to figure out the game mechanics as you play. So you're in a world, in a space where there are rules and it makes sense and it's consistent, and there's nothing stopping you from progressing through the game very quickly. You just have to learn the rules and the mechanics of that world. And I think that there are other games that do this, like Rain World does it as well, obviously, where there are game rules and you don't know what they are. But I think that this entire premise of the game not telling you how to play it and you figuring it out either through experimentation or just coming across it by chance is some of the coolest thing games can do. The most recent game that came out like this is Animal Well, which is an extremely good game.
I've wanted to play,
and it's fantastic. It's a really interesting take on the Metroidvania format, where they basically get rid of combat mostly, and it's much more about using your tools to traverse the environment in interesting ways. And most of that traversal and stuff, you just need to figure out yourself. So yeah, I think these games that do this, that let you figure out the mechanics in a more natural way, are often the most creative ones, and more creative than something like Killer 7, which is confusing and strange, but ultimately, to me, not as creative as some of these other games.
Deadly Premonition.
Another good example, very strange, weird game, but from a mechanical perspective, not actually that creative. Yeah.
And Wing also has a bonus question here. Did Silk Song live up to all the hype, Patrick? You'll have to answer this one.
I'm going to say yes. I think it has awesome exploration, great movement, good combat, great lore. I think that the game kind of pushed the combat systems to its limits because there's no easy parry. Like, you can parry some attacks, but there's no easy parry. And probably the most critical thing is that enemies have active hitboxes at all times, meaning that if you are ever occupying any space that an enemy is or their weapon, that will count as contact damage. You compare this to something like, Nine Souls, or, even 3D games, your Devil May Cry's, your Sekiro's, where enemies have to be attacking in order to create an active hurt box. It is, or I guess fighting games are the same, James, but the idea is that when your entire hitbox is active, enemy hitbox is active at all time, it does feel somewhat restrictive in terms of the kinds of attacks that enemies can do, because they need to telegraph every single movement. But does it live up to the hype? Yeah, I think so. I think it's one of the best Metroidvanias ever made, and I'm very much looking forward to what the devs do next.
I actually always hate when hitboxes are active all the time.
And that's Hollow Knight and Silk Song's fundamental design.
I didn't get very far in Hollow Knight. One thing that worries me about Silk Song is Hornet's hitbox, like the shape of her body, just does not seem like it would. Like, it seems like it'd be really annoying having your head be that shape in the game.
The game is designed around it. I mean, I think that the devs know what they're doing with giving her that size hitbox, essentially. Generally, her movement is more fluid than the Knight's. The Knight is very precise to control. Hornet's a bit faster and more maneuverable. So I think in most cases the encounters are good. The thing that's annoying, the thing that I found annoying, is basically I feel like some of the hurt box attacks weren't really telegraphed as attacks. The enemy was just moving. But when an enemy is moving, everything is an attack. If the hurt box is always active, everything is an attack. So it makes it difficult at times. But, you can learn enemy patterns and learn to read them and beat these bosses, and it's always satisfying to do so. I think even the run back criticism is overstated in some ways. I didn't really have too many issues with these bosses, except the final one just absolutely ripped me to shreds. But that's okay. It's the final boss.
All right. So the next question comes from Timentes. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you for the question. And he says, this is a great question. All right, so if you had to execute one video game or fictional character on live TV, who would it be? This will affect your reputation for the rest of your life, and people will know you as the guy who killed whoever you chose. I had an answer for this one that I actually would kind of be okay with. I picked Anna Angel from Pathologic.
Oh, you picked an evil character. Oh my god, how boring.
I had two answers. That was the obvious, I picked the fucking child trafficking character because fuck 'em. And then the other character I wanted to pick to be an edgelord, and I picked the most JRPG answer ever and picked God. God
is your fictional character. God, that's the level of edge that I aspire to, James. Yeah. Very impressive.
Just a joke.
God. Which one?
That's a good question. Kratos.
See, because I thought I had an edgy answer, but you've outdone me completely.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta aim for the heavens.
See, my edgy answer was the entire cast of Baldur's Gate 3. I thought like all of the companions at the same time. I know you said one person, but I just couldn't pick. I hate them all
Don't
so
like
much.
any of them. Okay. I mean, that's fair. I played through the entire game in co-op, and yeah, we didn't. It basically causes you to fail all the companion quests because you can't have them in your party. So, like, you can't take Shadowheart to the temple, so after you finish it, she's fucking mad and leave. I hope they fix that for the next game. I feel like...
They may have even fixed it already.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That Larian has been supporting that game with endless post-release content. Like, they're a good but yeah, for me, this is obviously a wild exaggeration, but there's something about the way the characters are written in Baldur's Gate 3 that just ticks me off badly. Even like Asterion, like I just don't like him. I understand that he has a deep and tragic backstory and so on and so forth, but he just strikes me as like annoying and whiny and arrogant. And I guess I don't understand the appeal of having someone like that in your party when you don't need to. So, and even the characters that are like less offensive, like Karlash, are just so bubbly and happy that it irritates me in another way.
You're the only person I've met that dislikes Karlach. I like her, and
it's just so coy. It's so... I mean, I think the best character is Lae'zel, and that's because...
I agree.
I think she's just written straight as a serious character. And I think that her arc is probably the most reasonable, but even then, it still feels very, like, artificial to me. I'm not at a stage where I can clearly articulate my dislike of these characters. I'm not sure what it is, and it might be more a consequence of it being a Dungeons and Dragons game and
the wizard's
structural limitations.
The wizard is the worst by so much. I forget his name.
Oh yeah. It might be they're flirting. I don't know quite what it is, but they just kind of run me the wrong way.
I slept with the goddess of magic, but I'm also a level 1 wizard, by the way. Like, get fucking retarded. Come on.
What a terrible sugar mum, if you know what I mean. He's only level 1.
So unbelievable. Like...
Yeah, but, you know, I still feel like my answer's been completely undermined by you, James, so you win this round.
Bonus questions. Are there any OSTs you find yourself coming back to every few months just to listen to? Yeah, Ghost Trick and Blue Revolver. Also, The World Ends With You and Symphony of the Night pretty often as well, I'd say.
For me, the one I come back to the most is Fury's OST.
Oh yeah, that too.
Cave Story. I just think Fury's OST is just unbelievable banger. There's one or two whatever songs, but I just love the electronic music in Fury. It's just so good.
And one more question. What exotic meat from a video game would you like to try? E.g. a dragon from Skyrim. Yeah, well, I think I'd like to try fried Elden Beast. I think that'd be quite the delicacy.
Yeah, so for me, this isn't really exotic, but I just wanted to say that in Castlevania, when you destroy a wall and that little cartoon chicken comes out, I've always thought it's the most delicious thing in the world. You know those little cartoon renditions of chickens?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'd eat. Actually, now that I think about it, you know Rainworld?
Oh my god.
You know the character you play? I'd like to eat that.
I think
Yummy slug cat.
That's like
delicious.
edgier than like the answer I gave for that previous
It probably
question.
is. You're right. That is probably more. Listen, everything else is trying to eat it. They must have a reason. Probably tastes delicious.
It probably does.
It's genetically engineered as well. So there you go. There's some deep Rainworld lore.
What do you think silt striders taste like the big flea things in Morrowind?
Oh, horrible. At that size, there's no way they taste good. Yeah. What about the cockroach from Bad Mojo?
That's not exotic. You can get
it's not really
anywhere.
exotic, is it? Yeah. You're right. You can grab that from your bedroom. Anyway, thank you for the question. I hope that was right. We're slowly singing into delirium. Okay, boom. Next one. I have also from Tementes. If you had to get a face tattoo of any video game logo, which would it be and why?
I didn't want to answer this one. I hate the idea of getting a tattoo in general.
What about an Australian flag
At least
on
At
your
least you
cheek?
could like pretend that was a temporary tattoo until you have to see the same people. I hate the idea of having something permanent on my body like that I could never get rid
What
of.
about 3 tears down your right eye?
Oh my god. I just like this is so hard. On your face too. Like me, I'd be able to just okay, like if I could hide it on my leg or something. What's the worst? Like, I feel like a better question's like, what's the worst tattoo you could get, like video game related?
A swastika.
Oh yeah, I really liked Nazi zombies, so I got the Nazi symbol on my face and then promptly got arrested.
Yeah, see.
Hmm, very questionable.
Listen, if you're going to get a video game logo tattooed on your face, you just want it to be something simple, right? Like for me, it would be like a Quake symbol. Because a Quake symbol is inoffensive, it's simple, yeah, you don't want anything too complex, right? So for me, I would think the Quake symbol maybe. That's what I have.
What if you had to nominate the other person to get one?
Well, I'm not a
That
bad
could cause
person,
suffering.
James. What's the symbol for Luna?
I've got a better one actually. I'd on your whole face. You know how Handsome Jack has that thing where he's got like the fake face on? I'd do that to Patrick's
No.
face. Like how his face looks like it's a faceplate.
Oh, yeah.
The little like hook thing, like yeah, on your face.
Well, thanks, James. I appreciate it. Thanks for answering the question in a genuine way.
I answered it 3 different ways, just not the way he asked.
That's true.
Sorry. He had another one actually. What do you think are the biggest differences between American and Australian audiences as far as what games they buy, if there's any difference at all? And I actually tried to find real data for this and found it really difficult
really?
to find any for the Australian market. It was easy for American and stuff, but over here it was a lot smaller. I don't know these days if there's that much of a difference.
There's no difference. Like, I know it may shock some people, but Australia is just a first world boring country in most regards. Like, we've got rural areas, but James and I both live in a major metropolitan area, and it's just a city. It's just
a western city, right? Yeah.
It's just a western city. And the thing is, Australia, if anything, is less culturally distinct than other countries because of our multiculturalism. So in our city, you can eat food from all over the world, and we have areas all over our city that are like where it's like more Asian food, and this is more European food. And Australia's a very bland country culturally, I guess you could say.
One thing I did wonder but couldn't find data to support was if the legality of firearms, like the fact that you just can't have them in Australia, affects like teenagers and stuff wanting to play FPS more or something.
It certainly does. I mean, and actually, you know what, James? You raise a really good point because we were dealing with some weird censorship shit about 10 years ago because of that lawyer guy. Was it Jack Thompson?
Yeah.
The GTA Hot Coffee mod.
Oh yeah, like how Hotline Miami 2 is actually still not legal to play in Australia.
Left 4 Dead 2 was also crazily heavily censored from memory.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But I think that's all gone now. I think we're just back to...
There's like a lot of... I think that is all born of like prudishness or like protect the children or like, you know, you're clamoring for votes in rural areas, that kind of thing. Like, I feel like that thing exists in the US too, though.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the blandness of our culture is also because we're part of the culture. But just generally from what I've seen, Australia is really a melting pot of many different cultures, and we're pretty boring as far as countries go, and we're just a city. So if you're in most of the major cities in Australia, it's not going to feel that different. America even has the thing where it has all the different individual states which have their own cultural vibe. In Australia, you barely get that. Like, our cities are a little different from one another, surely, but if you're in one of these cities, you're really not going to feel like it's drastically
Yeah,
different.
it's
from
going to be
another.
pretty different if you're not in the city, though, but we don't really have that perspective. Because most of
Yeah,
Australia is
and
like concentrated on the east coast of the country. There's like one or two cities on the western coast, like Perth and the surroundings. There's a bit on the south, and then like most of the north and central areas of like 80% of the country is not really inhabited because it's kind of like a dust bowl. So most of us are here on the east coast, be it in Brisbane or like Melbourne and Sydney.
so this is all to say that there's not really a dramatic difference. I think the further you go back in time, the more of a difference you might encounter. But nowadays, yeah, unfortunately, it's all pretty much the same. So I have my next question, which is from P2MC28. And he asks about are we planning to do any more NES, SNES, Genesis, or Mega Drive era games? Are there any that we're particularly interested in covering? He's struggling to come up with suggestions, as we've already done some of those big games like Earthworm Jim or Mega Man. But he's interested if we're ever, going to tackle some of those games, or if we're worried about doing certain games or ones that we're interested in. Are there any that stand out to you, James, that we could tackle at some point?
Super Mario RPG is a game I'd like to touch at some point. I know it's quite short for the genre that it's in.
Good.
Older titles, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe like another Mario or Sonic kind of title. I'm not. The more we did this, the more I realized, and the more I like browsed through old game lists, the more I realized I really actually don't want to play a lot of games before, like in that generation. They just don't seem very fun to me, like in terms of the mechanics they have, in terms of novelty, and especially in terms of the way that checkpointing works. They just don't feel like it feels like a lot of pain and effort to not get a very interesting discussion out of. Maybe like the old XCOM game, but the super old titles don't have a lot of draw to me.
Yeah, and part of the issue is that obviously James and I are a certain age, and these are really genuinely before our time. We grew up more with the Nintendo 64 kind of consoles, and for me, it was PC games from the mid 90s onwards, probably from about 1993, 94 onwards. So, and that's when I was like 4 years old. So, these games were not something we ever really experienced. So going back to them is more difficult for us than going back to other games. That being said, the one that really stands out to me that I'd like to play is A Link to the Past. Like we've already
Yeah.
played the original Zelda, and I know A Link to the Past is considered to be a masterpiece, etc., etc. It's in one of those. It's an obvious title in some ways. Like this is one of the games which you could say we should have played for the show a long time ago, but I still want to play it. Like, I'd like to play this Zelda game for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe like old Wipeout or like old F-Zero and Mario Kart stuff, like old racing games, I think could be fun still.
And I will say, if anyone has a suggestion for games of this era that we should play, if you can tell us why, that'd be awesome. Because James and I just don't have the general knowledge of this era in the same way. So I think Super Mario RPG is a good call out. I think Donkey Kong Country is
we should
one
do
that's
that for sure.
we should
Yeah,
definitely do at some stage. But it doesn't have the depth of interest that I do in other eras for sure.
good question though.
I've got a question from Rosso now, James.
Yep.
He says, there are too many games out there for you to cover, especially with multiple games in a series. For example, you covered Symphony of the Night, but you're not going to have time for an episode on every GBA and DS game that followed in its spirit.
It's funny that he asks that. We were so close to me picking another Castlevania from those games he's mentioning when we did the Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm definitely going to pick one of them this year.
Yeah, because there's
'cause I
three
wanna
DS
play them,
games,
yeah.
right? Yeah, I think what he's saying is like there are obviously like all of the GBA games and all of the DS games, and we probably won't cover every single one, right? And what he asks is, are there any game series that you've explored outside the podcast as a result of playing one first for the podcast? Or have you gone into fan maps, like, for example, Doomquake Thief, or simply replayed any of the games? And are there any that you want to explore more? Finally, is there any room on the show for a follow-up discussion, even as a more casual what I've been playing format? Like, I know for you, James, the answer is bullet hell shooters and
absolutely.
Mushigama, right? Yeah.
I want to play more, like, the DS Castlevanias actually interest me a lot, because a couple of them have unique mechanics, I think. I also realized a few years ago that I really like Metroidvanias that are more RPG than like precision-based combat.
Action?
Yeah. Like ones that just have a lot of stuff in them, and it's actually like not the ones that got popular long term. I think like you see the popularity of Hollow Knight and stuff, and Nine Souls, but I'm like, I just want the Castlevanias, and I played in the last couple of years. I played through Ast Libra and Heavy, and they were both really fun and what I wanted out of the genre. So we'll definitely revisit those again. In terms of like, because it wasn't about that specifically, series that the show got me into. For you, it was Ace Attorney.
For me, it's Ace Attorney. Yeah,
you pretty much played all of them.
Not all of them. I think I've played 4 of them. So I played the original trilogy, and then I played one of the newer ones with Herlock Sholmes, which was very funny.
Yes.
Also, he mentions fan stuff, which I definitely have played. So for Thief, I played through about half of the Black Parade, which is a 10 map standalone map pack for the original Thief. And it is too scary. I find Thief, for some reason, I know the game was made God knows how many years ago, but I find like with the audio design, there's something about that game that creeps me the fuck out when I'm playing it. And the Black Parade has a lot more of the more horror supernatural maps than the robbing a mansion maps. I'm fine with robbing a mansion, but when those haunts are walking around with their whispers and the zombies and ghosts, I was like, I'll play this another time, and then I never got back to it.
I remember when we did Silent Hill 2, at the start of that game, I was so spooked the whole time. And then...
Really?
Yeah, and then we covered enough horror games that it no longer really affects me that much. I do remember pretty much all of the bit that have spiders in them, though, make me really uncomfortable. But
yeah, Dark Messiah spiders, man, they make me uncomfortable.
Fucking PTSD from that game. Yeah, I always try to forget about that.
Then I've played a bit of Arcane Dimensions for Quake, which I thought was good, but the levels were really large and kind of sloggy to go through as a consequence. Like, good level design and everything, but the massive levels. There was a game that came out not too long ago called Hrot, which is HROT, and I feel like it kind of was like a version of Quake, or a version of Arcane Dimensions, I guess, that had far more compact level design, and I ended up liking that a lot more than Arcane Dimensions. Completely different game, I know, but I just want to shout out Hrot. It's a very it's a very brown shooter, so it's not the most visually appealing, but it's very dedicated to its aesthetic in a deliberate way. It's quite good. The game I've played the most, though, is definitely Doom. So Doom, I've completed several custom map packs, and I was trying to like go up them in ascending difficulty. The one I kind of tapped out on was Speed of Doom, which I really enjoyed for the first few levels, but they eventually turned into these things called slaughter maps. And slaughter maps are where there's just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of enemies. And I don't really enjoy that as much as the levels which are smaller, with a more discrete number of enemies, which is more what Scythe was doing in some of the earlier levels of Speed of Doom.
When you say slaughter maps, do you mean like there's so many enemies it's hard, or you're basically playing the Doom equivalent of Dynasty Warriors?
Oh no, they're very hard. Okay. Slaughter maps are
like Kaizo Mario of Doom.
So there are some. To be clear, you can make a slaughter map easy, right? Because there's invulnerability orbs, and you can just give them infinite ammo and just give them the BFG, and reduce the number of enemies and make infighting easy. But generally speaking, slaughter maps are considered the apex of Doom difficulty, and the hardest maps are almost all slaughter maps. So I'm not very good at them. I think it's like a different kind of skill that you have to learn, separate from regular Doom, and it's just not one I enjoy as much. I might get into them more one day, but the small levels with less enemies, even if they're dangerous and more limited ammo, tend to be the levels I enjoy more.
Yeah, so for a broad answer to this question, I think what makes me want to return to a series for the show is when a sequel does something significantly different, or I just really liked the first game and want an excuse to play more of it, right? That can happen too. Some examples for games that I would like to do sequels to that we haven't done yet. I want to do Metroid Prime 2 because it's significantly different to 1.
Really?
Yeah.
What, really?
Yeah, they add a bunch of extra mechanics in this like resource management thing that apparently is very divisive. Like people either love having to manage their resources or hate it. And based on, our opinion of Resident Evil, I think we'd probably enjoy that. So I'm kind of interested in that. I watched a friend recently play through all 3 Jak and Daxter games. We haven't touched that on the show, but that would be a great game to do both 1 and 2 of because they're significantly different. Like the first game's your bog standard 3D platformer, and the second game is they decided to make Grand Theft Auto 3 instead, but as a 3D platformer, which is kind of interesting.
Is it though? Like, is that structure that interesting? Sorry, this is a whole other topic, but
it's a great game. It's also fucking hard too, weirdly hard for a 3D platformer. We definitely get stuck on a couple of those levels for a while.
The more I play games, the less I want open worlds in my games. Just empty shit. Just get me to the good stuff. Cut out that open world stuff. I mean, if the open world serves a purpose,
the thing about the GTA style structure is it kind of funnels you to the interesting parts, and if you want to play with the open world, you can, but it's not your Assassin's Creed, I have to scour the whole map for stuff kind of thing, right? I also want to do No One Lives Forever 2.
Oh, yeah, that's a great shout, yeah.
Yeah, and there was one more I saw.
Warcraft 3.
Warcraft 3, actually, yeah, that's a good point.
Baldur's Gate 2.
I guess we should do that, yeah.
Final Fantasy 14.
14. Why 14? I want to do another Professor Layton game. It'll be exactly the same as the first one, but I want to play more.
Yeah, but maybe not for the show. That feels redundant for the show.
Yeah, but it's so fun. Anyway.
Good question, though. I think that's all the questions, James. We kind of got a bit messy and out of order, but I think we have now covered everything.
I think that is it. Yeah.
Yay! Wow, I'm exhausted. Those were such amazing questions.
We didn't even do a music break, and we're at like 3 hours or so, or a bit under. I'll trim some of the...
Or retroactively insert music. It's a podcast.
I mean, they can just stop the episode. Resume when they feel.
Play their own. You can play your own music track in here. You get to choose.
This one's good because it's good doing these long ones because things break down after the second hour. You start getting a bit unhinged because you've been recording for 3 hours without taking a break for some reason.
I know that is genuinely how I feel. I feel like on our episodes we're somewhat professional most of the time, but it got worse. I feel like you broke the dam with your God answer though, James. That's what started all this. But listen, to return back to reality, thank you so much to everyone for your amazing questions. We've said it before, but we'll say it again. You are the reason we do this show. We love talking about video games, and we will never take you for granted.
We will never give you up.
We will never give you up, never let you down. It's every time someone comes into the Discord and say, yeah, I've listened to every single episode. Like my heart,
that's so good.
My heart
wow,
breaks
really?
a bit. I'm
Why?
like, oh my god, why? It's like,
Why?
It's like, what is wrong with you?
I've listened to all of them.
It's like, man, I feel sorry for. Anyway, it really is something special to us when we hear these things, and we really appreciate all the discussion. For our end of episode plug, we'll keep it simple. And we'll just say that if you haven't joined our Discord server, we would love if you would join our Discord server. It's where we do all of our interaction with our community, and it's where all these lovely questions came from. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for listening, and thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, so what are we doing next period of time, Patrick?
We are doing something very interesting. So James and I created a list. We had 4 or 5 games each. We popped them all on a list, and we started striking out games until there was only one left. And that game that was left was a game called Frost. This was on your shortlist, James. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Frostpunk and why you chose it, why you're interested?
Yeah, so this is simple. One of my friends played a lot of it recently, and I saw some of the gameplay and was like, wow, that's cool. And so I put it on the list, and then it was the only one that Patrick didn't say no to. But seriously, though, it's super interesting. So it's basically like a city management sim where the concept is that the Earth is basically frozen over, so it's set in like the modern day Earth, and you're leading, a bunch of people who have found a little crater and have set up a big generator that creates heat in the middle of it. At the beginning of the game, you have nothing but the generator and some people, not even place to rest, and you basically go from day to day, getting resources from the surrounding areas and slowly building a town around the heat source in the constantly dropping temperature as the Earth gets colder and colder for a reason that eventually gets revealed. We haven't really done a management sim for a while, and definitely not one like this. I feel like this is the kind of, it's got that depressing, dreary theming, but also that spark of hope underneath it. There's a lot of politicking, a lot of you need to enact harsh rules like child labor, because you just need to do some of these, things and have, surveillance and authoritarianism to keep the lights on when things are kind of bad. So I think this is a great. It seems like it's going to be a great game for telling stories and trying to make decisions moment to moment. So I've played a bit of this now. I think it's going to be a really fun one to talk about.
I definitely think it's that aspect of the game that has me the most intrigued, because obviously I'll be interested to see how mechanically robust it is. We love talking about video game mechanics, but I'm just curious to see how well that more aesthetic narrative storytelling layer over the top, how successful it is at selling it. Because sometimes that layer, particularly on something like a management sim, can become, I guess, vapid or unimportant. Like you focus purely on the pros and cons of a decision as opposed to looking at the emotional resonance of it. But if they do a good enough job, then you might really buy into the fiction of the game world. And I think that the starting premise of the game world, that you're struggling to rebuild a city in a world that's hit permafrost, is a really good place to start. So I'll be interested to see how that goes as you play the game.
Yeah, spoilers, I've gone full police state here.
Yeah, I guessed as much.
Very hard line.
It's interesting you say that. I might try and be somewhat benevolent. It might make the game harder for me, though. We'll see.
See how long you succumb. Yeah. But yeah, very excited to talk about that one.
Yeah. So thank you again, everyone, for sitting with us the past 3 hours. And thank you for your questions, and we'll see you for Frostpunk.
See you later.